The ground beneath Naples, Italy has been rising for 21 years without stopping. The caldera responsible, Campi Flegrei, Europe's largest active supervolcano, holds 500,000 people inside its red evacuation zone. In the last week of February 2026 alone, it registered 70 earthquakes. The strongest single event in decades, a magnitude 4.6, cracked buildings in Pozzuoli last June and sent residents into the streets at midnight. The ground has risen 140 centimeters since 2005 and is still climbing 10 millimeters every month. Now, a peer-reviewed paper published in April 2026 has done something scientists almost never do. It put a number on it. Independent analyses of the uplift rate, the earthquake frequency, and the volcanic gas output all converge on the same window, from 2030 to 2034. That is when the system is projected to reach what the authors call a critical mechanical threshold. Not necessarily an eruption, but a breaking point in the crust underneath 3 million people that the science says is coming and cannot predict. Maria Scognamiglio has lived on Via Roma in Pozzuoli for nearly 4 decades. Her apartment sits inside a building that was already showing cracks before the most recent surge in ground movement. In late 2023, a vertical fissure split the plaster by her window, reopening an old scar from previous years. The municipal inspection classified the structure as medium seismic risk, but no relocation order followed. Maria's experience is not unique. She is one of 500,000 residents living inside the Campi Flegrei red zone, an area officially designated for emergency evacuation if the volcano's unrest crosses a certain threshold. The red zone covers the municipalities of Pozzuoli, Boccoli, Monte di Procida, Quarto, Giugliano, Marano, and 6 western districts of Naples. Many buildings here, especially those built before 1984, lack modern seismic reinforcement. A 2024 study found that tens of thousands of these older structures could fail under strong shaking. For families like Maria's, the risk is not theoretical. Each episode of Bradyseism, where the ground slowly rises as magmatic gases and hydrothermal fluids inflate the crust, brings new uncertainty. Cracks reappear, doors jam, and the sense of waiting becomes part of daily life. Beyond the homes and schools, the region's infrastructure amplifies the stakes. The port of Naples, just outside the red zone, handles about 7 million cruise passengers each year, transient visitors who would be caught in any sudden evacuation. Naples International Airport, Capodichino, lies only 12 kilometers from the caldera's center, within reach of both ground deformation and potential ash fallout. This dense web of residential neighborhoods, critical transport hubs, and vulnerable structures defines the scale of exposure. At its core is the unanswered question: with a population this large and infrastructure this intertwined, how does a paper evacuation plan translate into real protection when the signals keep worsening, but the official alarm has yet to sound? At the heart of the Campi Flegrei crisis lies a timeline of numbers that refuse to flatten. Since 2005, the GNSS station in Pozzuoli has tracked a relentless upward shift. The ground has risen by 140 centimeters, over 4 feet, transforming the caldera floor at a pace that has only grown more aggressive. Between 2005 and 2018, uplift rates hovered around 4 to 5 millimeters per year, a slow motion warning. But after 2018, the pace doubled, reaching a sustained 10 millimeters per month by 2026. The GNSS time series and INGV displacement maps confirm this curve, showing a concentric dome of strain centered beneath the most densely populated neighborhoods. Seismicity has followed the same upward trajectory. The INGV earthquake catalog now logs thousands of shallow events each year. Most are small, but the pattern is unmistakable. More frequent, more clustered, and increasingly energetic. On June 30th, 2025, a magnitude 4.6 earthquake struck near Pozzuoli, the strongest in decades. It rattled buildings, cracked walls, and briefly forced the suspension of airport operations. The event was not an outlier. In the last week of February 2026 alone, 70 earthquakes were recorded in a burst-like swarm, a weekly total nearly 5 times the long-term average. Each of these swarms adds to the cumulative Benioff strain, a measure of seismic energy that, when plotted against the uplift curve, reveals a synchronized acceleration. The April 2026 study brought these strands together, applying a finite time singularity model to the GNSS and seismic records. The result? All major indicators converge on a projected critical mechanical threshold between 2030 and 2034. This threshold does not guarantee an eruption. Instead, it marks the point where the crust's ability to accommodate further strain is exhausted. What comes next, eruption, major quake, or a sudden Bradyseismic reversal, remains uncertain. But the numbers show a system moving in one direction, toward a breaking point that the current emergency framework has yet to fully reckon with. Bradyseism is the slow, relentless rise and fall of the ground, driven by fluids and gases migrating from deep within the Campi Flegrei caldera. At the surface, this process is invisible, except in places like Pozzuoli, where the right GNSS station tracks every millimeter of vertical movement. Since 2005, Wright has recorded more than 140 centimeters of uplift, and by early 2026, the ground is rising at an average of 10 millimeters per month. This is not a uniform swelling. The most rapid deformation is concentrated beneath the densely populated neighborhoods west of Naples, where the concentric dome of uplift is sharpest. The mechanism is rooted in hydrothermal pressurization. Magmatic CO2-rich fluids ascend from depth, infiltrating fractures and pores in the brittle crust. As these fluids accumulate, they increase pore pressure and generate horizontal tensile stress, prying open existing cracks and creating new ones. Each increment of uplift further weakens the rock, amplifying the feedback loop. More fluid, more pressure, more uplift. The Wright station's data is not just a line on a graph. It is the quantitative heartbeat of the crisis. The current uplift rate, sustained at 10 millimeters per month, is more than double the long-term average before 2018. This acceleration is confirmed by INSAR displacement maps and cross-validated by the INGV network of seismic and gas sensors. The pattern is clear. The deformation hotspot sits directly beneath the area with the highest population density and the greatest concentration of vulnerable pre-1984 buildings. As the ground continues to rise, the question is no longer whether the system is under strain, but how much more it can take before the next regime change. Scientists at the INGV Vesuvius Observatory, who monitor these signals daily, describe the current Bradyseism as a runaway process, one that can be measured in real time, but whose ultimate outcome remains uncertain. Campi Flegrei's caldera is under constant watch. The INGV Vesuvius Observatory runs a 26-station seismic network, GPS receivers like Wright, tilt meters, and gas sensors, all feeding real-time data into automated alerts and weekly bulletins. Every tremor, uplift, and gas shift is logged and double-checked, leaving little room for missed signals. In April 2026, David Zaccagnino, Matteo Picozzi, and Carlo Doglioni led a study that applied a finite time singularity model to this data. They focused on three signals: vertical movement at Wright, cumulative Benioff strain, and the hydrogen sulfide to carbon dioxide ratio at Pisciarelli. Each indicator, when run through the model, pointed to a mechanical threshold between 2030 and 2034. The study's message is precise. The authors require a legal caveat. This is not an eruption prediction. Instead, it is a quantitative warning. The crust is nearing its breaking point. The threshold marks a regime change, not a set outcome. After this, the system could fail in several ways: earthquake, Bradyseismic reversal, or less likely, eruption. The network's strength is clear, but forecasting has limits. The singularity window is robust until 2030. Uncertainty grows beyond. Weekly INGV bulletins confirm acceleration, but the operational trigger remains elusive. The vulnerability of Campi Flegrei's red zone is measured not just in centimeters of uplift or earthquake counts, but in the daily decisions of its residents. Tens of thousands of buildings, especially those constructed before 1984, remain structurally exposed to the kind of shaking already recorded in recent years. A December 2024 Nature Communications study mapped these weaknesses, warning that progressive collapse is a real possibility if seismic intensity increases. Residents like Maria Scognamiglio navigate this reality every day, living with cracks that reappear, doors that jam, and an atmosphere of anxious waiting that has become routine. In Pozzuoli, Boccoli, and the surrounding municipalities, civic groups such as Voci del Caldera have become increasingly vocal, demanding transparent risk communication and practical drills, not just information leaflets. Social media feeds reflect a divided mood. Some residents express fatigue and resignation, while others urge immediate action as scientific bulletins grow more urgent. All of this unfolds within a metropolitan area of nearly 3 million, where the boundary between scientific warning and operational response remains blurred. The Nature Communications analysis underscores the essential point. The risk is not confined to a hypothetical eruption, but to the everyday fragility of a community living atop a system approaching a mechanical threshold. Without a tested plan, the gap between scientific certainty and civic protection grows wider, leaving the question of when, if ever, the evacuation protocol truly begins. Evacuation hinges on the capacity of a handful of roads. The A1 motorway, the main artery out of the red zone, can handle only about 2,000 vehicles per hour under emergency conditions, a figure confirmed by Exe Flegrei 2024 traffic modeling and civil protection's own corridor diagrams. With 500,000 residents and an average of 1.4 persons per car, even non-stop flow would require more than 7 days to clear the zone, far exceeding the official 72-hour promise. Secondary routes like SS-268, SS-7, and SS-145 add only limited extra capacity, and local arterials are designated bus-only during the alarm phase, with a combined maximum of 600 vehicles per hour. The current evacuation blueprint depends on pre-positioning buses and supplies at staging areas, but this cannot start until the orange alert is declared, a trigger that remains undefined despite accelerating Bradyseism and a projected mechanical threshold between 2030 and 2034. Civil protection leadership faces 4 urgent recommendations. Publish a transparent trigger for pre-positioning, upgrade the A1 corridor with reversible lanes, run a full-scale resident evacuation drill, and commit to continuous public traffic flow monitoring. Until these steps are taken, the 72-hour evacuation claim remains untested and, by the numbers, unattainable. Today, Campi Flegrei's Bradyseismic uplift accelerates past 110 centimeters, yet the 72-hour evacuation plan remains untested for 500,000 residents, many in centuries-old Pozzuoli buildings. Science can pinpoint a critical threshold, not an eruption date. Until policy catches up with physics, the uncertainty becomes the most dangerous force beneath Naples.